All right.
If we're ready, we should be streaming.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. All right. So this will be the governance committee meeting then of January 13th, 2021. The meeting is via WebEx. Sadly, I'm getting all too used to these kind of meetings. I can't wait for this to be over. For the record, that said, is that I see a list of people that appear to be attendees. Looks like every name that's on there is somebody that I recognize at this point, but for the sake of the record, if you don't mind, I'm going to do an attendance and I'll just go the way your names appear on my screen. And when I call out a name, if you could just click your microphone on and say you're here, that would be great. So I'm able to confirm that you're able to hear and to speak for this meeting. So the first one I have is County Attorney Tony Palumbo.
Here.
Next would be Doug Eviltoft from Spring Lake Park.
Here.
Catherine Tim.
Here.
Excellent, Catherine. Scott Schulte, Commissioner Schulte.
Here.
Next on my list is Britta Maddox. Britta.
Here.
Excellent. And next is Corey Camp, Anoka County Finance.
Here, Brad.
All right. And I have George Jensen.
Present.
George Jensen's present. And then Jason Neihart.
Here.
Jason's present. And Jeff Caters.
Here.
And looks like the last one on my list is Val Sprynczynatyk. Val, you here?
I'm here.
All right. Is there anybody else present that I didn't call out? All right. Sounds like we're here. So step one of business then will be approval of minutes. I know that the minutes were sent out ahead of time to include some budget information, but I'll be looking for somebody to move the minutes.
I'll move approval. Schulte.
Schulte moves the minutes. Is there a second?
Second, Eviltoft.
Second, Eviltoft. Is there any further discussion on the meeting minutes? And I think we can do this via like a non-negative response. In other words, we're not going to do a formal poll on your computer. By the way, there will be some issues that'll pop up that we will poll you on, and that I think all of you are pretty experienced at that now, that it'll appear on your screen for a vote. So that said, does anybody object to the approval of the meeting minutes? All right, I'm hearing no objection, so the meeting minutes will be approved. Subcommittee reports. First would be the budget committee, and I guess I can talk, once again about budget or project status. The financial status report was completed by Corey Camp and is dated January 12th. And frankly, it's become a static document. For the sole reason is that we're still waiting on a final system acceptance letter involving Central Squared, and there is at least one outstanding piece to their original contract agreement, and that as long as that final piece remains outstanding, we will not make our final payment. George, do you have anything you want to add to that comment?
No, I agree. I don't think we're going to see project end till into 22.
All right, and I'll just say that that's not necessarily a bad thing. They still have one element to provide, and as long as they still have a financial incentive to keep working for us, we're not grumbling about it being outstanding. And if you look at the project overall, we're still under the forecasted budget from the very beginning. So so that's not bad news, or at least I don't view that as bad news. So with that, I think that's the project status report. Does anybody have any comments or questions? All right, hearing none, then we'll move on to next payments. Jensen.
It's pretty much covered in that financial status report. We do have one more payment of $189,440 that by contract, we rewrote that contract to that amount. There was 3 equal payments of that amount. We're waiting for them to finish the final piece of the project. One note, we do have a budget balance or a credit balance of $96,403. So in essence, we owe them about $93,037. The only thing I would add to that is I continuously have to remind Central Square that they do what that full amount of credit is. Every now and then a conversation will come up and they have the wrong numbers. So then we go through a renegotiation and show them all the documentation, and I keep telling them, reminding them what we actually do have as far as credit. So I'm keeping an eye on that for us.
All right, that sounds great. All right, and actually then I think we can move on to actually it's called the financial status report, but in reality, we're talking about our budget. Corey Camp prepared it was our 2020 budget, and then in reference to our 2021 budget, which are documents that were included in the materials that were sent out to you. And obviously, we're always working towards the next year's budget. So we'll be discussing 2022's upcoming budget here before too long. But at this point, I know Corey is prepared to talk about the closeout of 2020. And then one of the topics I guess we'll have to discuss at some point is that, due to COVID savings related to conferences being canceled, vendors not traveling, those sorts of things, is that there were significant savings in 2020, and which is going to lead to a growth in our fund or our budget balance or unspent budget. And at some point, we'll need to have a discussion, a deliberate discussion outside of the governance committee. Maybe we'll have a subcommittee that'll make recommendations on how to handle the overages in the budget, because as just to remind everybody, we had previously discussed, we want to have a reserve fund, but we want the reserve fund to be a dollar amount that's reasonable and makes sense, and that somewhere along the line we should be reducing fees accordingly so that we don't have this ever-growing budget. That said, is that this year, or 2020, I should say, was an unusual year and hard to predict what 2021 will bring exactly in terms of some of the things that we ordinarily would do being canceled. One of the comments that George had in his PSDS update was conferences already for 2021 being canceled. And so obviously that has an effect on the budget. But Corey, are you prepared then to discuss the 2020 budget to the 2021 budget?
Sure, Chief Wise, I can do that. First of all, in your packet, this is a budget to actual for 2020. That's on page 15 of the packet. And I just want to show that this is currently an estimate. We are not done. We still have outstanding bills, and this takes that into account. Currently, we're expecting to be under budget by about $217,000. So that's quite a bit. Obviously, there is a portion. Trainings and meetings, 30,000 was our budget. We're coming in at 22,779 left over. We only spent 7,000. That is reflective of the situation that with the pandemic and the inability to travel. And that will probably continue into 21 as well. So that will kind of show up there. We are seeing some, I guess, downtrend on our support contract for TriTech, and I believe going into 22 we'll be able to lower that a little bit. So I think there's going to be some positive budget change for 22. That's going to allow us to probably even lower our overall expenditures. George and I have been talking about that and are planning to kind of start put the final touches on the initial proposed in early February on that. So overall, we're saying 217. It could come in even more favorable. These, again, we're being very conservative in our estimates. We've gone through and said, okay, we know we've got outstanding bills from the city of Fridley and city of Coon Rapids that are coming in. They may not come in as we've estimated here. It may be a little less. And there also might be some system maintenance and support bills that are still outstanding where we had estimated some plans based on what we knew, but it may not be exactly what's happening. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that. So yeah, to your point, again, as we look to 22, if you go down to the budget one on page 16, I just wanted to highlight the 21 adopted budget was a slight decrease from the 20 budget of 0.26%. We're probably going to see some ability to reduce that even further, which I think will be helpful as we look at dues. 2.46% was the increase for 21. And overall revenue was like 7% to the police because of the changes on the police side. But I think, and we were anticipating over 5% in our forecast. I see that changing, and I see us adjusting because to Chief Wise's point, we don't want to keep too much of a reserve on hand, and we don't want to try to charge if we don't need to. So that's overall what's happening with the financials. I think by the end of the first quarter, we'll have our proposed budgets and everything outlined for discussion to occur. So George, anything you want to add to that?
I'll just add that I'm in negotiations so far. It looks like it's going pretty well with Central Square and their support and maintenance. It looks like we're going to be able to take out quite a few, about $140,000 plus the support and maintenance costs. And that's simply because we don't have the same system that we had 5 years ago. It has evolved, it has gotten slimmer, and therefore they need to readjust their support and maintenance costs to match that. A great example is no longer do we use RMS Classic. We're pretty much all on the web. That was a $60,000 expense inside the support and maintenance contract for the year. And I'm trying to get them to remove that, or at least get it down to a reasonable number for what we use comparatively now. So we're working it for you guys. We'll get it down, but I think that's going to be that's going to really reflect in the 2022 budget.
Any other questions?
Okay, I'm not hearing any questions on that. So like I said, is that I think between now and maybe the April meeting, I might, if it's all right with everyone here, I think I might look to meet up with Corey and with George at least to start to talk about having maybe a routine process for addressing these unspent budget dollar amounts so that we have a set process that we can just follow every year rather than sort of an ad hoc method of dealing with it from year to year. I think we just need to have a plan in place in that we can, and I just think that would be probably the best approach. And then it'll be brought back to the governance and then ultimately in front of the JLEC for final consideration.
I agree, Chief.
All right, excellent. And then I'm moving on, looks like, let's see, data standards, Chief Caters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a report. Our group has not met since the last JLEC meeting that I provided an update. We didn't have enough items on the agenda to call a meeting.
All right. That sounds good. Then we're on to item number 3 then, contract services and change orders. And George has a topic for discussion here regarding, well, I'll just let George explain it from the agenda. George?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, so I was looking at this unspended funds from 2020, and we had quite an issue in our alternate PSAP. For those that don't know, we have the main PSAP at the Governance Center in Anoka City, and then we have the alternate PSAP, and I know Valerie can explain all this much better than I can, but we have that alternate PSAP out there, and we've been trying to man that. When COVID hit, we tried to man that pretty heavily to give more space and to the working dispatchers, and we ran into a couple of problems with that alternate PSAP, and it really comes down to the connection that PSAP or that center has with our public safety data system. Troubleshooting it with Logis, who's our network manager, vendor. They came up with, they believe it's the Zayo network. It's that's handcuffing us and really making that that facility unusable because we never know when it's going to stall. So the idea came up with just establishing a fund. Logis provided a $40,000 estimate back in April, May timeframe of what they thought a project would cost to run a fiber optic line from the county sheriff's office to that alternate PSAP site, that radio tower. That and then that would they felt pretty sure that that would fix the issue for us and make that alternate PSAP a viable asset to us again. We would keep the Zayo network as a backup only at that point. The nice thing is from what I understand, and I don't know all the details, we understand that the alternate PSAP is going to be built somewhere in that area also, and then we could be able to extend from the radio tower to that alternate PSAP, wherever that new place is going to be. At least from what we understand when we had these conversations earlier this week. So it's just an idea. I just wanted to, do we want to make this? Do we want to try to do this? I'm just trying to gain some ground on this, at least try to establish a fund. So if we do want to move forward, we have some funds to get this done.
All right, thanks, George. I'm gonna dovetail into that. So obviously, we're talking about the public safety answering point and redundancy in that, in the sense that if dispatch ever goes down at their primary site for whatever reason, that standing up and having that alternate site work efficiently is important. The question is that, you know, the way this is written is that we're not talking about we want to spend unspent money from 2020 just because we're looking for reasons to spend money. The idea is that this is the first discussion, and that the further discussion needs to be, is this something that we think is really necessary? And if so, then what do we do to make sure that that alternate site is robust enough that it would be able to be used? Because it's clearly, given world events, not beyond the realm of possibility that an alternate site would be needed. And, you know, maybe I'm assuming obviously conversations like this would be important for Anoka County and for Val, because it affects her too, in that the idea is it would appear that we need to take steps to make that that fiber more robust. Does anybody have any comments, Val, maybe, or anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Val. I would like to comment. Thanks. Yeah, as George said, that center has not been stable for us. We have dispatchers working out there, and then they would have a failure in the middle of the night. So then our option was to bring them back here, which is not very conducive. Then we're short-staffed trying to bring them back here safely. You know, with all the civil unrest and everything going on, ideally it would be great to have a backup that is not in the government center, just in case something happens and we can't get our dispatchers to work or have them working in a safe environment. So I think if George has money that he's willing to put toward that to get the connectivity up and stable, I think that would be great.
Yeah, and I would just say George and I have been in conversations about this, and he really is just looking for authorization to start, to use his language, running down the trail of doing this, in that it is an opportunity to use unspent budget from 2020 for the sake of making this happen if it's deemed worthwhile. And obviously Val weighing in way she just did there, in my mind, should be pretty persuasive to those of us on this committee.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Tony Palumbo. And on the Zayo side of it, yeah, we've experienced some ups and downs with Zayo as a provider. So for me, this gives me much more comfort that we would have a direct line and not be dependent upon a third party.
Sounds good. And I saw Commissioner Schulte.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I've heard the problems out there at that site, and I think this is a reasonable expense of leftover dollars out of the 2020 budget to do that. To Tony's point, though, I think we're still reliant heavily on Zayo because we'll be the fiber optic line will come from the sheriff's office over to the or over to the alternate PSAP, but the sheriff's office still is served by Zayo. So it's all in the Zayo loop. So I think we're only bypassing Zayo for that short line from the sheriff's office to the PSAP, alternate PSAP. Either way, I'm in favor of it. I think it's a good idea. And I think in the long run, we're going to have to think heavily about how we deal with the fact that Zayo is not a good provider and that we've negotiated with them dozens of times to no avail. And do we end up having to do this all over the county through the entire loop to do either find another provider or string our own fiber? But with that, if you're looking for a motion, I'll move that we approve this.
We have a motion by Schulte, and I think this is one that we had prepared a poll for. Doreen, I don't know if you're ready for that, but if somebody's willing to second the motion, I think we should put it to electronic poll.
Palumbo second.
Yep, a second by Palumbo. Is there any further discussion then on using $50,000 from the remaining 2020 budget to start a project with Logis and Anoka County IT to provide fiber optic line between the radio tower and the sheriff's office?
Chief, the only question I would have is maybe to George or Val, is this the total amount of the contract, or is this just a beginning amount? I mean, is it going to get done for the 50,000, or is this just preliminary work? Just want to make sure before I vote.
Mr. Chair, this is George. To answer the question, there's a point I'd like to make also, is that the public safety data system is now on fiber throughout the county. We spent some funds last year, and we did some deals about equipment and such with Anoka County IT to use unused fiber lines throughout the county to get us a fiber optic connection between the Anoka County Sheriff's Office and the Governance Center, and make it redundant. So if something breaks, it turns around, but the traffic turns around and goes the other way. So we have a completely redundant fiber optic connection between both of the Government Center and the Anoka County Sheriff's Office. What this does is includes that PSAP in that fiber optic line. Just want to make sure that we understand we are in fiber for the public safety data system. The question as far as, is this the total cost? And that's why it's 50,000 compared to 40,000. Now, Logis is very good at estimating, and they understand the government process, and they want to make sure they provide a number that is conducive to an entire project. I have no documentation that this is project cost. I rounded it up to 50,000 just for that fact. I don't know what the cost is actual, but I wanted to have a fund that I felt would cover. So I'm not coming back for more money in a future meeting. So that's why we have 50,000. And again, I'm just looking forward. Okay, yes, you guys are supportive. We can pull that dollars out. We can make an account for me to spend out of in our through the finance system, and now I can start working with Logis, any of their sub vendors, and Anoka County IT to get this done, because it's just not Logis doing it. It's just not. There's no way my office is going to do it, but it's going to be a team effort to get that done.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, if I can clarify then, I'm certainly in support of this as a concept, but in Georgia, what I expect then is when there's a final agreement, that would probably come back to JLEC or at least come back to governance for approval, correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, very good. I know we had a motion and a second and a discussion just there. So Doreen, is there a poll then that we could put up on this, or do you want me to do verbal? All right, so it looks like the motion is up, and if everyone could please vote on that, that would be great.
I don't have the ability to vote, Chief, but because I don't have a keyboard here, but I will vote yes, so for the record.
All right, looks like the poll has ended. Frankly, I can't tell the vote from where I'm looking at my screen.
Yeah, it looks like 4 yeses. 4 of the 12 attendees have responded. So if everybody can vote, I am voting, so that would be 5. So that would be the majority, Chief.
Okay, so that's sufficient then for us to move this on to the Joint Law Enforcement Council then, correct?
That is correct.
All right, that works for me, because I know these technology struggles are never ending. All right, let's see. Looks like we're on to, let's see, all right, on to number 4, item number 4, the PSDS update review. George.
So the PSDS update's updated specifically for this meeting. It's an up-to-date document as of Friday last week, really no changes since then. I hope you understand that we're working hard for you. Jason and Britt are doing a fantastic job in their respective areas. The browser's coming along very well. We have some more projects that we want to put together for the browser, and really looking at that browser as our wholesaler between the RMS systems and the CAD system and everything else that we don't have or that we would like. To make our firemen, including our firemen, our officers, our records techs, and I'd like to even expand that to the fire here eventually. But the review stands, or the update stands. Again, it's an accurate document as of Friday last week.
All right, well, that sounds good. Obviously, there's items in writing there, and of course, as always, recommend that a thorough review of that take place, because that will also be provided to members of the JLEC. I would expect a number of good questions. What's that?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Schulte, yes, sir.
Just a quick clarification. George, on your page 2 of your document under budget, on that first line item, I assume it's a typo, but it says we have started working toward having the 2022 budget ready for a discussion in April of 2022. Should that be 2021?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. I thought looking at a budget for 2022 in April of 22 might be a little late, so glad that's a typo. Thank you.
All right, and then, well, actually, as long as we're on the topic, is that the 2022 budget will be adopted at the July JLEC meeting, is my understanding, or is our process from there. So now I lost my train of thought, but I think we're okay to move on from this item. Item number 5 then will be communication center update from Val Sprynczynatyk. So Val, if you can provide an update for us, please.
Yes, sir. I think that was a good plan. Well, so let's do it. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to see if I'd like to share my screen. If you can see that, can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so as we were talking about, we pulled the dispatchers out of the alternate, partially because of the connectivity issues and partly just because it makes more sense for us to be under one roof. So we gave up our meeting/training room to bring them back over here in the government center. They're not in the dispatch center, but they're in the training room, which is kind of next door. So I just wanted to show a couple pictures. We used to have 10 training positions in this room. So we're pulling out the equipment. This is the installation. And this is the final. We were hoping to put 6 positions in with our CARES money, but because of the space limitations, we were only able to get 5 in. So this is the finished room. And then this last screen is just for your information. This is what the dispatchers look at every day. So the 2 screens on the left are our phone. The one on the bottom right is the radio, and then the other one's our CAD. So right now we have 5 fully functioning positions in our training room. / meeting room that we are now using to staff to social distance our dispatchers. So I just wanted to let everybody see that. And then the only other thing I really have is we have been working on our ASAP to PSAP, getting that up and running, which is our integration with the alarm companies. We had some issues with our GIS, but we've figured that out now. So we're hoping to have that up and running by early to mid-February, which will eliminate a lot of calls into the dispatch center for the alarms and then follow up with keys and everything. So we're excited about that. And then we've been working on our guide cards to streamline more of our questioning, and we will hopefully have those up by March. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Val. Actually, do you mind, Val, if I ask you, how are you doing with recruiting and staffing and those sorts of things? Because I know you had a couple of retirements towards the end of the year.
Yes, we did. We promoted Dan Zhang to our senior radio tech position. So we have one opening out at the radio shop, which is posted right now. And then we have 7 dispatch positions open. 2 of them are because of the recent retirements. And right now we did the video test. We had 29 people successfully pass that. And now they're doing a 2-hour sit-along in our dispatch center, because we want them to get a true effect of what the kind of calls they're dealing with and, what the environment is. It's, as you know, it's not what you see on TV. So they're doing that right now the rest of this week, and then we're hoping to interview the end of the month and have some people starting by March.
And can I say then that you're confident that from that pool of candidates, you'll be able to find the people you need?
Yes, I am confident. I'm optimistic, yes.
All right. All right, well, that sounds good. All right, are there any questions for Val from anyone? All right, excellent. The next agenda item is Fire Protection Council, and I'm not sure I see a representative of fire in the meeting. Is there anybody here?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
This is Jason Knight. I'm not on the Fire Protection Council, but I could say I don't believe they had a meeting since our last meeting here. We do have one scheduled for the 28th to discuss the budget.
All right, that sounds good. Thanks, Jason, for that information. One other item that's not on the agenda, and Tony and I had mentioned, or he had talked to me about the executive committee. Tony, did you want to talk about the executive committee here, or is that something you're talking about at the JLEC?
Mr. Chair, yeah, we have, every January we have to have elections. And my understanding is that all members of the executive committee have agreed to remain on the executive committee. So I just want to inform certainly this body that, remaining as chair, the sheriff as secretary. I think Chief Wise, you're on that. I think Chief John Swenson is, and Doreen, remind me who's the 5th on that. Do you remember? I don't remember who's the 5th anyway. So those will be coming up for elections, and I will be talking to people before then. Unless anybody on this call has any indications they would like to have somebody else be on the executive committee, please let me know at this point.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in then. It was just an informational point for this group that everyone who's currently on the executive committee is willing to continue to serve, and that, of course, if there's a new name, it's that somebody that has an interest in being on the executive committee, that should be brought up at the next Joint Law Enforcement Council meeting coming up in 2 weeks. And because I'm sure at that point we'll be needing to vote for the executive committee. So,
Mr. Chair, we will also need 2 more appointees to this body.
oh, yes, that's right.
Mayor Ryan and Mayor Trude have left the organizations, so we will need 2 more. So if anybody on this phone call has a recommendation, they should probably get it to you, shouldn't they, Chief? And then you and I can discuss that.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Yes, that would be very important, is that we're going to need 2 additional members. I would hope that somebody would be willing to step forward who has a general interest in these sorts of things. If there's any particular candidates that should be brought to the Joint Law Enforcement Council meeting, please let me know. And by all means, recruit somebody that has an interest in these sorts of matters so that we have, so that we can have a full complement of a governance committee, so that we can make recommendations to the Joint Law Enforcement Council. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
we did as a county board appoint the mayor of Andover, Sherry Pukala, to the Joint Law Enforcement Council. And she would probably be a really good replacement for Mayor Trude on this body if she's interested. So that's a thought that's rolling through my head right now.
And to kind of piggyback on that, because both of those were mayors, or more importantly, both of those were elected officials, and since we deal with financial issues, I think it is always a better idea to have elected officials on the governance committee, keeping an eye on certainly costs. It's not required. My understanding under the rules is I appoint with approval of the joint law, but I certainly would favor that. So along those lines, if, certainly the mayor, the newly elected mayor, certainly should be considered, as well as any other elected official throughout the county.
All right, well, I'm happy that there's one name at least to solicit, and we'll see if she has an interest in this. I do know of her, at least, that she does have a law enforcement background, so I suspect she might have an interest in being part of this group. Let's see, are there any other issues that somebody wants to bring before the committee here before we talk about our next meeting and end our WebEx call?
Chief, the only thing would be if you and I can stay on the on this call when everybody is done. Just a couple of matters I want to chat with you about.
Sounds good. I will do that. All right.
And Commissioner Schulte, do you know the new mayor, Bacala?
I do. I know Sherry pretty well.
If I could ask, since I have to appoint, but would you be willing to at least reach out and explore whether she has an interest, Commissioner?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will do that.
Thank you.
And I have one quick question for Chief Wise. I was listening to a podcast this morning where they were reading a police report of a squad car that was stolen from Coon Rapids and wound up in Ames, Iowa. And they were going on and on about what a long police chase that must have been. And I just was screaming at my podcast player that there is a Coon Rapids, Iowa. I just wanted to verify that it wasn't one of your cars, because they never did get the message.
Commissioner Schulte, thank you for bringing that up. I'm sure I had no fewer than 6 phone calls specifically related to that. No, it was not Coon Rapids, Minnesota. The 14-year-old girl who stole the car stole it from Coon Rapids, Iowa, and then drove it to another location in Ames, Iowa. So no, thankfully that was not us. So I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. All right, so then the next meeting, or I should say the JLEC meeting then, is January 27th. Also be WebEx, and just to refresh everybody's memory is that we're going to continue on with WebEx meetings until further notice. I hope at some point we get to the place where we get the green light to hold our in-person meetings, but unless somebody objects, I'm thinking our next governance committee meeting will be WebEx, and if we're really fortunate is that maybe it will be our last WebEx only, at least, meeting. So does anybody have an objection to our next governance meeting, which, if I understand right, date-wise, is that the JLEC will meet on April 21st, and traditionally we meet 2 weeks prior to that, which would put us at April 7th, 2021. And as always, sometimes significant conflicts pop up, but I don't know of any conflicts offhand. Does anybody have any objection to a WebEx meeting on February 7th at 2 p.m.?
April 7th, you mean?
I'm sorry, April 7th, yeah. April 7th.
Yeah, Chief, the only issue would be generally there is isn't there a law enforcement seminar that's usually been held, and that's why we've worked our second quarter JLEC meeting around that. I'm assuming if it is, it's going to be virtual and we could work around it anyway. because I will have to establish the date of our next meeting, but I think you're right. At the Joint Law Enforcement Council meeting in a couple of weeks, I'll have to establish our next meeting, which should be April 27th, unless that conflicts with a law enforcement seminar that usually occurs around then. Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. Chief Feebletoft, do you know? I know I have an inbox or an email item about it, but I didn't look at it.
The Executive Training Institute has been moved to October.
Okay, no
All right,
problem.
there you go. So no conflict then from law enforcement for April 7th. So with that, I will set our next meeting 2 p.m. April 7th, and that'll be a WebEx meeting. And with that, I think we'll take a motion.
Chair Wise.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Can we clarify I think Tony said April 28th, and I think you said April 21st for the next JLEC meeting. And then the 2 weeks, depending on what date you're talking about, the 2 weeks is going to change prior to that. So, I mean, normally the second quarter would be the fourth. I mean, our meetings, the JLEC meetings are on the fourth week, the fourth Wednesday.
What's the date of
not
the
sure.
fourth Wednesday, Doreen?
Oh, I thought it was
28th.
28th, okay. Do you want to do it then the 14th? Governance on the 14th rather than the 7th of April?
Yeah, I apologize. I guess I looked at the calendar and I did the wrong week. So, all right, correct. Yes, it's whatever the traditional, if JLEC is ordinarily the fourth Wednesday of the month,
Yes.
then governance should be the second Wednesday of the month. And if that's the 14th, then it should be the 14th.
Okay.
Is that where we're at then? All right, so to be clear then, it'll be the 14th if that's the second Wednesday.
All right.
All right, sounds good. So I think we're ready for an adjournment unless somebody has something else they want to bring up.
If I can ask that, Director Ebeltoft and Chief Caters also remain on the call afterwards. I'd like to talk to the three police chiefs, if I could.
That's fine. I do have one correction. The ETI is not until November. My apologies.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion and a second. Anyone who's opposed, say no. All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next go around.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.